How's everybody doing today? So guys, we're going to be covering the Tennessee Senate race today. And I feel comfortable, actually, let's talk about this for a second, saying you guys, because an interesting thing has happened to my demographics since I have drifted more from the news and like criminal court proceedings type of coverage and stuff like that into politics more so, which is that my audience over the last couple of months has shifted from being anywhere from 60 to 70% female to being like 95% male. So there's probably a lesson to take from that, although I don't exactly know what it is. So Tennessee is one of those Senate races wherein there is no incumbent running because the incumbent senator, Bob Corker, Republican, has decided not to run for re-election. This has led to a race between Democrat Phil Bresden and Republican Marsha Blackburn. Now, typically Tennessee is very much a red stronghold state. Tennessee, maybe not to the degree of Alabama or Texas, but is definitely clearly a left or a right-leaning state. And typically, this would not be what you would consider a battleground state. But it just so happens that the Democrats have scored pretty much the nominee of the century when it comes to this race. They have scored just about the one man who may be able to pull a Democratic win out in Tennessee. As a matter of fact, at least from what I could see, they found the only man who has won a statewide election in Tennessee as a Democrat, at least unless we go back to pre-Reagan times when southern states like Tennessee were a lot bluer. And that would be former governor of Tennessee, Phil Bresden. He was governor of the state from 2003 to 2011, and he also is very much a moderate. From what I could see on this guy's positions, he's just as likely to be registered as a Republican as a Democrat. He just happens to be a Democrat. He's very middle of the aisle, very much a neutral kind of centrist. However, despite the name recognition of being a former two-term governor, and despite the fact that he is, like I said, a very appealing candidate for possible swing voters, he is considered an underdog in this race, and that is despite the fact that, as I can see, the polls are actually tied. The four most current polls being CNN, which has Bresden at +5, 50 to 45, NBC, which has Bresden at +2, 48 to 46. Fox, which has Blackburn at +3, 47 to 44. And Gravis, which has Blackburn at +4, 48 to 44. So if you aggregate those and tally it out, it comes to a pretty much dead even split. Now, aside from, again, being a centrist and being a former governor, Phil Bresden has one other advantage going with him, and that's that Corker, the former senator who is retiring, almost kind of endorsed him, despite being a Republican and Bresden being a Democrat. It was a very kind of ethereal type of endorsement, but he just said that Bresden was a great guy, and when later asked to clarify on his comments, he didn't. But Marsha Blackburn is also considered a very good candidate for the Republicans. Again, she's a solid Republican in a solid Republican state. Also, she has recently received a resounding endorsement by the NRA, and the NRA has started to go after Bresden. And this is important because I want to highlight something to you about this Tennessee election. When I was looking into this election and I was looking for coverage on it and I was looking for the positions and the data, one of the things that stuck out to me is that two of the most recent articles covering this election were directly citing the hunting license history of the two candidates. That being that Marsha Blackburn apparently has never had a hunting license, and Phil Bresden has not had one in a decade. Here's the thing. That goes a long way to show you what kind of state that Tennessee is and what kind of demographics we are looking at. I can't imagine most states the hunting license history of candidates playing a huge factor. But here in Tennessee it does, and that tells me a couple of things. First off, that there is likely a very rural Republican lean to the state, as opposed to the more aggressive kind of neo-Republican Trumpist ideologies in some states that are very prevalent. This is more of the old-fashioned rural country heartland Republican type of feel. Second is that obviously Second Amendment rights are a hugely important thing to the voters here in Tennessee. Not here in Tennessee, but in this race. And so I think that recent NRA endorsement may be the kind of push that Marsha Blackburn needs to pull ahead in this race. Especially if the NRA starts actively campaigning with the idea that Bresden is anti-gun or weak on Second Amendment rights. I think that might push the election into Blackburn's favor from its current position as being, again, a dead even split. So, the other thing I wanted to talk about, the other major issue that might play in a little bit here, is the Kavanaugh hearings. I know I haven't really touched on this much. I might touch on it in a shorts video. I want to start doing this. I recorded the first one last night, and I might start putting up a couple today and tomorrow. It's a new kind of format I wanted to try that's much briefer and maybe a little bit more heavily edited. I have asked that Maria start going and go through these videos really quick and just put some notes and annotations in and make them look a little bit more presentable and professional, and give you something give you a visual feed of information, like being able to see the polls and stuff like that. And she's done a good job at doing that. I didn't want her to waste too much of her time on it, but just spend a little bit of time on each one. And I think that those shorts will be a good place to do that. So I might touch a little bit more deeply on the Kavanaugh hearings there. But Phil Bresden, his other big advantage here in maybe appealing to Republican swing voters is the fact that he's taken a pretty fair stance on the situation with the Kavanaugh hearings, in that he has pushed for the Senate to go ahead and proceed to a vote if this woman accusing Mr. Kavanaugh of sexual assault does not decide to come forward and speak to the Senate. His position being, we're here, we're willing to listen to her, but we can't continue to stall if she is not going to come speak to us. And I think that that's a very fair position to take. He said, if these accusations are proven, then they would definitely be disqualifying or near disqualifying, his exact words. But, that he doesn't believe that the hearing should be held off indefinitely while waiting for this woman to decide whether or not she is willing to come speak to the Senate. And that's a very fair position. And I think that kind of fair position, and being the Democrat to come forward and kind of say that, I think that might go a long way to kind of convince some swing voters in Tennessee over to Phil Bresden's side. He has not, by the way, as an added addendum to that story, said whether or not he would vote to confirm Kavanaugh if he were elected to the Senate. So as for predictions here, where do I think this vote is going to go? What do I think is going to happen in Tennessee? Here's my honest opinion, right? The polls are tied. This is a tight race. But here's the thing. I just don't see Tennessee swinging left at a state level this year. I don't think it's going to happen. Tennessee is clearly a right-leaning state, and politics are very divided right now. And I just don't see there being enough swing voters actually turning out to vote for Phil Bresden that it would be able to push him ahead in this election. I say Marsha Blackburn has a 75% chance of coming out ahead. I'm fairly confident in her victory. There might be some time in the future where Tennessee will swing left again. That type of stuff does happen over time, but I just don't think it's this year. So that's my take on it. Guys, if you want to see me cover the rest of the close Senate races, and I'm getting to the point where there's really only one or two more that I honestly want to cover, and then I'm okay with going ahead and getting more into some gubernatorial races and some congressional races. If you guys want to see that, don't forget to subscribe. Please don't forget to like this video. Let me hear what you think about the Tennessee Senate race. I'd love to have a conversation with you guys about it, especially if you're from Tennessee. Have a great night. I'll see you in the next video, and peace.